Hi, Dave. Welcome. Today I'm joined by Alejandro Sahuquillo. He runs a Spanish-speaking Tesla channel with over 50,000 subscribers. I had the honor of being interviewed by him on his channel just today. I'll go ahead and link to that video in the video description below. During our conversation, he expressed kind of gratitude for the speed reading videos that I had on my channel a while back. I thought it was an amazing kind of almost superpower that people can have if they could read super fast. And I was kind of sharing my own experience and journey with that. Alejandro says it's really helped him a lot. I wanted to get him on my channel to share his personal experience because I think this could actually help a lot of people if they take it to heart. So Alejandro, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Dave. And
Great.
it's a pleasure to be in your channel. And as I've told you just a moment ago, thank you very much because what I learned in your videos, it has changed my life because I've passed from reading 21 books. I have it because I have at least 22 books in 2019 to more than 150 books in 2021. And I had seen some other videos and read something about speed reading, but the way that you explain it first, I think you had a video on your own, and then with I think it was a Twitter follower that you were doing a conversation. It made an impact to me, and I remember actually that the first day that I said, "Okay, I have to apply the essence of speed reading that Dave is sharing, and also the techniques." I remember that the first day I was blown away because I was used to reading a few pages, I don't know, maybe in 1 hour, 10 pages. And suddenly I changed to reading maybe 60 pages. So maybe 5 to 6x gain. And I remember the first day after that, I had a meeting with a person and I had a headache of the intensity of the reading. Afterwards, no, after I have been
Yeah.
used to that, but I was blown away. I said, wow, I mean, you can read, and it's not only reading fast, but being able to skip all the in Spanish we say remove la paja, that is all the bluff. So you're able to skip the bluff. So it's a superpower, and I really recommend to everyone to watch your 2 videos. I think
Yeah.
actually you have a third one
Yeah.
about speed reading.
Yeah. So, yeah, for those who aren't aware, I think my speed reading approach is very different than most I've seen out there. I don't really focus on the actual technique as much. Like most approaches are like, oh, do this and with your eyesight, with your hands, all this other stuff. My approach is more based first on this theory of catching the most important part of the content. And so the idea is every book has an argument and it's like a tree trunk, or it's like a tree, right? So the main argument is like the trunk, and that's the first thing you want to get. And then the branches are kind of the sub main arguments, and then everything else is more of the leaves, the examples, right? That color the tree and stuff. And so I think a lot of people, they get sidetracked because they're reading a page for, like you're saying, like an hour or like 10 minutes per page or something, and they think they need to focus on the leaf, and then it kind of makes it where books become overwhelming. Like some people, they read books, like one book for like a month or something, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's crazy. But I think if you take a step back, and this works better, I think, with nonfiction books, but if you're able to find the argument and then the sub-arguments, and then you put in the leaves and you just give the priority that you want to. Like if you don't want to, you don't have a lot of time, you don't have to read all of the leaves or pay attention to everything, but you want to get the main point, right? And the main sub-arguments. So I'm curious for you, what part of kind of, this approach has helped you the most? And how have you been applying it when you read? Like, do you actually look for the main argument and the sub-arguments first, or kind of what's your approach when you read a book when you first sit down with it?
I'm still learning, and I do look for the argument, and when I catch it, as you explain in your second video of speed reading, your conversation with the Twitter follower, when I catch it, it's really easy because there's some books that they're repeating the same thing over and over and over again, and it's super fast because I remember, I don't know if you know I mean, I'm sure you know John Bogle, the investor that I think he passed away a couple of years ago. He has a book that is 1,200 pages or something like that, 1,200 pages, and he repeats over and over the same concept. That is what is it? The passive. And right
Index
now,
funds.
yeah, the
Yeah.
index funds, the passive index funds are cheaper,
Yeah.
and they give better revenue than the active ones, because maybe some actives are having a bigger share, but after commissions they are lower. And he's repeating the same over again. So I remember that I catch it really, really soon, and I was able to read it. And maybe sometimes there was some example that it was really interesting, so I could stop. But the other time I was saying, okay, 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 okay. So it's been really, really useful. Sometimes maybe because I don't understand so much the subject, I don't grasp the trunk, or maybe the author doesn't have a
Yeah.
clear view, and it takes me longer. And what has happened to me is like this technique for me is really useful, but it happens that in some books that are super profound and that have so much content, it's hard. So I have to read slower. But that's not a problem with me, because it's having like a superpower. It's like having a Tesla Model S Plaid that you know that you can go 200 miles per hour, and sometimes you have to go slower.
Yeah.
But yes, being able to grasp the main idea and then understand that you don't have to read everything that he or she is explaining, it has been extremely useful.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just to go from 20 books 2 years ago to 150 books just last year, I mean, that's a huge change
Jump.
in, yeah, just the amount of books. Um, I'm curious, like, how has that changed kind of your exposure? Did it help you get introduced to new ideas, new fields? Yeah. Has it changed your thinking at all?
It has completely changed. I have studied architecture, pharmacy. I've lived in 5 different countries. Actually, 1 year I lived in Philadelphia with the Peyton family, that if they're saying hello, it was a great stay. So I have, before reading with so many books, I had such an open mind. But reading so many books, it has been the experience in my life that has opened more my mind, and that I understand. Of course, now I understand that I don't understand anything, but in comparison to how I was 2 3 years ago,
Yeah.
I say, wow. I mean, now I understand people and myself, why we behave how we behave from a psychology point of view, from an anthropology point of view. Now I understand a little bit about investing. How I remember a few years ago that I was day trading and everything, and now I said, okay, it's as easy, because I've read many books about Warren Buffett. I say, okay, it's as easy as finding a great company and stick to it for years, and just be researching it. And yes, and now I'm able to help people, because I see the lacks that I had a few years ago, that I'm changing it, because also reading is about learning and applying, at least for myself, applying changes in my life. So when I see a friend or family, sister, mother, that they might do something different, I help them by telling them what I learned, my experience, or even giving them the book, and telling them, look, this is the book that you have to read. And it's mind blowing if you start to read a lot. Well, one thing that I do that I'm not sure if you share is that Abraham Lincoln, he used to say, it's easy to fool all the people some of the time. It's easy to fool some of the people all the time, but it's impossible to fool all the people all the time. So, as there are millions and millions of books, I try to find the authors that they seem interesting to me, but also I give a lot of weight on the reviews. So I go to Goodreads and I see books that have a lot of reviews with with a very good rating. Of course, there are exceptions. Sometimes I read books that are, for me, really, really interesting and they have a low rating. And also the other way around also happens a lot. But to read a lot and a lot of very, very good books of different subjects is amazing, and it has
Yeah.
changed my life. And now when I speak with my best friends, they said, my best friend Juanito, he say, wow, Alejandro, you are like Erasmo of Rotterdam, like you know everything. But he's saying, like, I
Yeah.
know everything from the Alejandro that he met a few years ago, because
Mm.
now I'm speaking about
Yeah.
genetics, CRISPR, and anthropology, how the
Mm.
universe was formed,
Yeah.
psychology biases, and it's incredible.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. Like, in my 20s, I had this like, you know, just massive amount of time where I just, you know, went to a library. I lived in a library and I just had like, you know, 10 or 20 books every day that I would just read, like every day, 10 or 20 books, you know? And sometimes I would just go to different sections of the library where that I didn't understand or know about. You know, I go to the art section, or history, or anthropology, or music, and just like try to expose myself to some of, you know, what is this all about. But yeah, it's I think oftentimes though, it's like if you don't have the skills to unlock that, if you're reading too slow, then it's overwhelming to even try to do that. I think one of the key skills that I think has helped me a lot, I want to get your feedback too, is the ability to quickly discern whether the author really like is communicating well, like knows what they're talking about, and to toss a book before like you just waste too much time. Like for example, like sometimes I'll have a book and I go, wait a minute, this author is so convoluted. They're not clearly saying what they're trying to say. And I think, you know, early before I learned, you know, reading fast, I would blame myself, say, oh, maybe I'm not reading it careful, I don't understand or something, right? But over time, it's like the skill of discernment where I'm like, this guy doesn't get it, you know? Like they're confused themselves. And I might go through, I'm like, oh, it's a waste of time, you know? It's like, if they can't communicate clearly, then it's like, it's not my problem. You know, that's not, you know, the reader's problem if the book is convoluted. It's the author's problem. And there are plenty of books out there, authors who try to communicate clearly and who do a much better job. So I'm not going to waste my time, you know, on books that, you know, are just too just out there. But yeah, I don't know. Does that resonate? Has that helped you at all? Or is there any other kind of skills that have helped you a lot?
It resonates a lot, but I have a value in my life that I like to finish what I start. So when I'm fast reading, when I find this kind of books that I see that the author is not fulfilling my expectations, or
Yeah.
as you say, they don't have a clear thinking, or they repeat the same things that I already know in a not deep way, shallow way. What I do is like read super fast.
Yeah.
But lately, one of the things that I do every morning is to think about my last day, what I did that helps my mission in life. And lately, because of this thinking, I realized what you've said. Okay, I'm losing my time. So I'm starting to changing because I'm a
Yeah.
beginner compared to you so many years. But I have put my rule that I'm going to read 100 pages, and if these 100 pages it's I see that is not useful, I will toss it. So I'm changing, but I think you're right. I mean, we have a limited time in this life, and
Yeah.
it's useless to waste your time with a bad book, or for example with social networks. Before I used a lot social networks. Right now, okay, I post in my YouTube channel, but I barely use even WhatsApp. That my friends, family, and people, they say, okay, I cannot contact you, but I'm very happy. But about the reading, once again, the one thing that happens to me sometimes it's that I realize that this subject is not that the author is not communicated well enough, is that I don't have the level high enough. Because sometimes I hear some artificial intelligence researcher recommended one book, and I think it's not really technical, but then I start reading and it's extremely technical. So these books, I toss them right away because I don't have the level. It's like
Sure.
reading a book in Arab. But yes, I think it's a very good it's a very good advice that you're sharing, and I'm starting to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yes,
Yeah. I think, like you mentioned, investing books, and I think, yeah, business investing books, I think are hugely underrated in the sense that, when you're investing, like you can gather a lot of other people's experiences through books, right? And they need to try to make sense of their experiences and find some meaning, and they're conveying that in a book. And I think what it does is you could, let's say you read 1,000 investing books, you're going to be able to see the similar train of thoughts of certain authors and approaches. And you can start to weigh them against some other approaches, maybe. Like, for example, you talk about John Bogle, let's say with passive, low cost index funds. And then you might have another section of authors, let's say like Peter Lynch and some others who are more on growth stocks. And you might have some traders who are, doing, and you might see some different principles on different approaches to investing. And that allows you to have like this, I guess, whatever approach you choose, you can mitigate, I think, a lot of the downsides or the risks or the weaknesses, because you're able to see like your approach is one of many different approaches, and it has strengths and weaknesses, and you need to focus on certain strengths, compensate the weaknesses, and have some humility that this is my approach. That's why, for example, I don't bag on traders. Like, even though like I'm very more long-term focused and stuff, like I have a lot of respect for short-term traders and gamblers in a lot of senses, because I've read so many books about trading and the great traders of all time and understand their mindset. That I'm like, wow, man, this is like, there's some legitimacy, major legitimacy, in various approaches. But yeah, same thing with index fund. Like, I've read enough on passive, index fund investing. There's so many books, like hundreds and hundreds of books on various types of, index type of, investing, that, yeah, I have a lot of respect for that. Even though, I see the weaknesses and both sides, I don't bag on that, it's like, I think there's definitely, some type of time and place for certain people with that type of approach. But yeah, I mean, with your investing, I know you've been talking about reading more. Like, has that helped you kind of learn quicker, maybe? And what have you learned personally from like the books you've read on investing?
I think it was 10 years ago. I had a friend that he was a trader, and he's a really smart guy, and he's earned money trading. And I remember I started trading with a lot of leverage. And first month I doubled my money, and I said, wow, I don't understand why people say that this is hard, or even why people, they say they go bankrupt with investing. And the second month I lost everything. So I said, okay, I don't want to invest anymore in my life. But afterwards, when I started reading like different types of books, I think I came with Warren Buffett's, I think it was a Snowball, and then some other, like also Ben Graham I read, Charlie Munger, and then Peter Lynch, also Howard Marks. And I understood that it wasn't so much about the price, but more about the value, and more about finding extremely good companies and buying them at a good price and waiting. And that helped me when I found Tesla. I remember that I said, okay, I invest a little bit of money. And then I started researching. And once I started researching a lot and a lot and a lot, that was after Autonomy Day, so 2019, that actually the stock went down.
Yeah.
I said I had my bias, and I said because I had some shares, some stock of Facebook, Apple, and some other companies, and I sold everything except Facebook, Apple, and Google. And I said, okay, because these ones are great companies, I cannot sell them. But then, because of reading about investing and about psychology, about biases that we have, and I said, okay, what are the numbers and what are the possibilities, what are the CEOs of these companies, and what is the 5-10 year outlook that I can see. And I realized that it didn't have I didn't have any reason not to sell those shares and go all in Tesla. And thanks to the reading, it helped me in a double way. One, in understanding that there's a way of investing that I wasn't doing. Mm, and second, it helped me read a lot about the subject. So I read a lot about Elon Musk, about what he did in SpaceX. I read a lot about physics. That I'm an architect, so I know a little bit, but not as much as an engineer. I read a lot about psychology, about anthropology, about marketing. So I start to pick different things. When you were saying, okay, you're reading this book and now you understand that this is one thing, but I can link it with another book and another approach. This also happened to me with different types of subjects. When I read a marketing book and maybe the author speaks about a technique that works with people for selling whatever, I kind of understand that maybe that works also in the markets. So maybe then I read another concept and I link it. So yes, reading, it has helped me so much in my investing tranquility, because I remember the other day in a friend of mine, he's a teacher in a business school, and he asked me to speak about my experience as an entrepreneur. And I told them about investing, and I told them, look, investing is also about time. So if you start investing really young, you guys are 18, 19 years old guys, you are going to compound through the years. And also you're going to learn a lot if you're interested in learning. And I remember one student, he asked me, but what you're telling us about Tesla, about you have done 20x in your investing, isn't that luck? And I said, yes, it's luck, because I was in a moment that I was lucky to find a company that it was cheap and it had been flat enough for years. But it wasn't luck to go all in. If I hadn't read so many books, I wouldn't have the confidence to go all in a company. And don't worry that a few weeks after I invested, it went down 30%, because I understood that the markets historically they do crazy things, but in the long term they go up, especially if you're invested in a company like Tesla.
Yeah. So for going back to your 150 books, so do you have some type of schedule where you read a book
Yes.
every couple of days, or every week you have a certain number of books you want to read? Like, how are you organizing that?
It's not so much that I want to read so many books, because there are books that are shorter, longer. There are books of subjects that are a little bit specific that I don't understand really well, so I have to read a little bit slower. But what I say to myself and what I do every day is to read 3 hours. I read 1 hour just when I wake up, then I read 1 hour in the middle of the day, and 1 hour after I finish my work. And what I try to do is follow your advice that I think it was in your second book, that I try to read at least 1 page per minute. Yes, 1 page per minute. So 60 pages per hour. Sometimes I read more if I can, but I have that reference that maybe I should go higher. And that helps me a lot, because sometimes I said, okay, I'm reading too slow. Why am I reading? Is it because maybe it's really so specific that I have to really wait and understand? Or is it because I'm coming back to my old way of reading to try to understand everything? So that reference really helped me.
And are you reading in Spanish or English? What language?
I'm mainly reading in English. I pick all the books that I'm interested. So some of them are in original version in English, and some of them
Mm,
they are in Spanish. And
got
the
it.
books that I don't find them, I buy them on Amazon. I read also on Kindle.
Yeah. I mean, that's great. I mean, mostly English. So this isn't English isn't your first language either, right?
No, no, it's not
Yeah.
my
So
my
you're
first
reading,
language. Is
yeah, mostly in
yes,
English. It's amazing. 150 books. I think it makes sense. If you do 3 hours per day, do you stick with this every day or is it flexible?
yes, I stick with that every day during weekdays. During weekends
Okay.
that I have more social life,
Mhm.
I sometimes don't read the 3 hours, but what I have found that is helping me is
Mhm.
that, mm, okay, maybe this is way too extreme and people might think that I'm crazy, but I try to remove all the waste of my life. So, for example, social network, watching series. I don't have Netflix, I don't have Amazon,
Yeah.
but sometimes I want to watch a good movie that as I have Apple TV, I can buy or rent a movie. So what I do is, okay, Alejandro, if you watch a movie, you have to read 4 times that day. You have to read 4 times the length of that movie. I started by the same
Huh.
time, then I
Interesting.
did double, and then I did 8. So maybe on the weekend, some Saturday that I'm not meeting anyone, or I'm meeting somebody like really late at night,
Yeah.
I have to read 8 hours to watch a 2 hours movie. So sometimes I read even more on the weekends than during week times. But no, usually during week times I read 3 hours every day. And during the weekend, it depends. Sometimes I read a
Yeah.
lot, and sometimes I don't read as much. But
Yeah.
every day, even if I have events, I go out, I have whatever, at least I have to read 1 2 hours, and
Yeah.
I try to recover them,
Yeah.
these 3 hours.
I can't imagine like for some people who are into gaming, like if they had to read 4 times the amount of reading time compared to their gaming time, like that would be insane. So how long have you been doing this 3 hours per day during weekdays for?
I'm not sure because I started maybe with half an hour, then 1 hour, then 1 hour and a
Got
half,
it.
then 2 hours.
Hmm.
So I was increasing throughout the
Got it.
time. Maybe 3 hours the last year and a half or something. Before it
Got
was
it.
2 hours, before
Yeah.
1 hour or something. So I
Yeah.
was increasing because, as maybe you've said before, reading was boring and I
Yeah.
didn't. Okay, sometimes I read like really really good book, but it was something strange. But now
Hmm.
that I have the superpower that I learned from your videos, reading super fast, it becomes really rewarding, and
Yeah.
it becomes even addictive. It's saying like, okay, I have so much to learn, and it's so interesting, and it's helping so much my life, and I try to help other people because just this habit that I have,
Yeah.
that yes, I read 3 hours, and if I could, I would read more.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm curious, would you, let's say a person's just starting out, they're like, huh, this is interesting. And let's say, they end up watching my super reading fast videos. I'll link to them in the video description here. And what would you suggest as a game plan? Do you think, putting aside 30 minutes a day, 60 minutes a day, um, getting some books or having like, try to don't spend too much time on one page, some time limit, like a minute per page at minimum. Like what type of practical tips would you give people who are just maybe starting out and wanting to try this out?
Okay, first thing, if he or she doesn't read anything, I would say start with half an hour.
Mm,
Then I would say, if you can, start do it the first thing on your day in the
mm,
morning. Then also link to the habits that I've learned by reading. Then, after you've read this half an hour, give yourself a reward. For example, if you read before breakfast, give yourself a greater breakfast than you do every day.
mm,
And then, about the super reading habit, is like, put yourself, if you read I don't know, 10 pages an hour, put at least 60 pages, like something that is really challenging, that it breaks your head, that it makes a headache, that what happened to me, because then maybe you struggle at the beginning,
Yeah.
but you will see the impact and you will see right away that you can make a difference. I wouldn't recommend to start by saying, okay, try to read 10% faster or double. No, try to do it 3 times, 4 times, 6 times
Yeah.
faster than you usually do
Yeah.
it. And please start reading something that it's really, really interesting to you.
Mm.
So, for example, if you're investing in Tesla, read one book that they've told you that is really interesting. If you're into gaming, read a book about gaming,
Mm.
or even an article, a web page, but read something that is really interesting.
Yeah.
Those are,
Yeah.
I think, the advices that and what helps me is, like, usually people read. When I ask people when do they read, they
Mm.
read, no, yes, I try to read, and I said, when do you read and how do you read? And
Mm.
they say, I read in bed late at night. And I say, that's a wrong approach, at least for
Mm.
my experience. I also read in the bed and at the end of the day. And I said, no, read right at the beginning of the day that you're fresh, and don't read in a bed or in a sofa. Read sitting in a place and read with the book more or less in your same level. I have a thing to have the book in my side view, and
Mm.
that is what I would recommend. I don't know if I'm missing, and what do you recommend all of
Yeah.
us
No,
apart
no, no.
from
Those are
what I've
great.
said?
Yeah, that's great suggestions. Yeah, I think a few things. One is I think most people can improve their reading speed 5 to 10x. Um, just learning some basic kind of things. One idea is most people think that they need to read the book on the author's terms, like the author is dictating what to read, when to read, how fast to read, all this stuff. But you need to change that. It's you. It's your terms. You are the person. It's your time, and you're the person looking for some information, some answer to some question, right? You don't have to read it on the author's terms, right? I think that's one thing, right? Another thing is, yeah, I like to have like more like dedicated set aside time. In the past, I would go to a library or to a bookstore and just get a big, just pile of books, and I would just, on questions on things I want to really find answers to, and I would just go through them, very quickly, and I think that's just to kind of rather than looking at like you're saying this nighttime. I've never been able to do that, late at night, try to, read a few pages here and there. It just isn't that rewarding. I don't know, for some reason.
Well, when you read some book that is new and with new concepts, how are you able to memorize it or keep
Yeah.
the key ideas?
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, I think it's personality too. Like some people, like I'm terrible at certain details. Like, for example, if I play a game of Trivial Pursuit, where it's like these facts and details, I'm like the absolute worst person possible because I just not interested in the minute details. So I'm looking more like when I read a little bit more higher level, and I'm looking for ideas that is really going to shape kind of my view of everything. And so like when I'm reading business or investing books, oftentimes it's like in the past I was like, okay, what is it, for example, on marketing, what is it about marketing that like I need to know, like what do the best people in the world understand about marketing that I don't, or other people don't understand? Why are they the best and the best? Right? And that's what I want to learn. Or like management or investing. Like I want to crack it where after I get to a certain point, I'm like, oh, I get it. I understand, why they're the best of the best, because they understand this about this, right? So that's kind of my journey. I'm more like, and once I get it, I kind of feel like I have a grasp of it, an expertise of that area. So I'm more looking like I look at it more like I'm uncovering, like gem mining. I'm digging some things off the ground, trying to find that gem. And I find a little bit here and there, a little bit here and there. And then I don't feel like I need to write it down because if it's really important, valuable, I know it's valuable. and I feel like I can't lose it for some reason. It's just like an insight that it just grows to the next insight that I get. I feel like that's another thing that's overlooked is I think a lot of our understanding and learning is compounding. Meaning like you learn something about this area and then it helps you to understand something better on another area, right? And all of this stuff just makes it where you're able to learn faster and deeper. Like for example, you look at something just from more angles and you're able to just pick up something quicker and more valuable. And so, yeah, that's how I look at it. I'm just always just trying to find, the next valuable insight or gem. Alejandro, super fascinating, good stuff. Thanks for sharing, giving me feedback. Curious, so are you doing a YouTube full time? Are you architect? Like what's your day job here?
Right now, I'm YouTube full time and also writing books. I wrote a book about happiness after everything that I learned from different subjects. And now I'm starting to think and do the layout of a second book.
Okay, perfect. Sounds great. I'll go ahead and link to your Spanish speaking channel. You also have an English speaking channel. It just has some interviews, right, that you put on there?
Yes, mainly interviews. Yeah. The best moment in history.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good. Alejandro, thanks for chatting. It's great meeting you. And hope to hear from you again.
It's been a pleasure. Hasta la vista.
Thank you.